When I mention the San Antonio Spurs, I imagine you automatically think Victor Wembanyama, and rightfully so too, especially for the current Spurs team. I mean, the guy's an alien, is 7'4", probably taller, and is coming off one of the best rookie years in recent memory, and probably in NBA history at that. Not only did he win Rookie of the Year, but he made first team all defense, took second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and put up insane numbers all around, putting up 21.4 points per game, over 10.5 rebounds per game, nearly 4 blocks per game, which led the entire NBA by the way, and all in under 30 minutes per game. So yeah, I think it's safe to say it's only up from here for them. And they definitely will need that too. They only won 22 games last season, and I would go as far to say that they might double that this season. Now it definitely will take a lot for them, but I think they have a very interesting and well put together team, albeit a young team. And if you take a look at what they did this offseason, they picked up some notable additions. Maybe one a little bit past his prime, but CP3, Chris Paul is a very good addition and a great mentor for their young team. In addition to that, they picked up a guy like Harrison Barnes who they pretty much got for free, along with a few other guys as well. And we're going to go through what they did, how the Spurs could look this season, how Victor Wembanyama could look in year number 2, and then if they could truly make a playoff push or not, as that has become a big topic of debate. Before we get too far into it though, if you love all things NBA, then don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. And to begin, I think we gotta begin with their new additions. I mentioned CP3 and Harrison Barnes, but it's a little bit more than only mentioning them. For Chris Paul, he will be entering year number 20 in the NBA. And despite that being pretty unusual, he still is a productive player. No, maybe not LeBron James level of productive, but definitely a good player yet, and a very good mentor at that. Wherever CP3 has gone, the young guys have gotten better around him, and I think that'll definitely be true again for the San Antonio Spurs, who are the 4th youngest team in the entire league, having an average team age of only 24.2 years old, which CP3 is single-handedly driving up by the way, as they were the youngest team in the NBA last season. But again, I think he definitely will help them out, and boy oh boy could they definitely use internal improvement. Not only referencing the 22 games that they only won last season, but how much room for growth that they actually have. Even apart from Victor Wembanyama, as we all know there's a lot of growth to be had there. Other guys like Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Stephen Castle, and many more have lots of room to grow, and I think that Chris Paul will help them do it. I mean, for a point guard or point god like himself, he will definitely be the driving factor for it. Between his mentorship, on-court ability, and ability to advance their half-court game, Chris Paul will be a driving factor for the San Antonio Spurs' internal improvement. I mean, other than Harrison Barnes, the other guys in their team have never played with a point guard like Chris Paul before. And it's a far cry from the Jeremy Sohan point guard experiment they tried last season, and thank God that one's over too. But again, Chris Paul will definitely help their team out, and especially within the half-court setting too. To say that San Antonio is a bit discombobulated last season would be putting it bluntly. And yes, they were young and you gotta expect turnovers with that, but maybe not as many as they committed. They committed 15.1 turnovers per game last season, the 4th worst in the entire league. And I think that really held them back from a half-court standpoint. But now with Chris Paul at the helm, I think that'll be a lot better. I mean, believe it or not, even at 39, the guy had the 2nd best assist-to-turnover ratio last season, only falling behind Tyus Jones among qualifying point guards. But again, Chris Paul will definitely help lead them forward in that category, and I imagine they will no longer be in the bottom 5 in turnovers per game. Apart from that though, they're going to get a great game manager, a great mentor again, and a rock-solid veteran role player when healthy. Though that has been the problem for Chris Paul, not only lately, but really throughout his entire career. And if they hope to make a playoff push, which might not be their short-term goal quite yet, but they will need a healthy Chris Paul if they hope to do it. The guy's not played in over 70 games in about 3 years now, and that would be a problem if they hope to make the playoffs. Again, only a short-term goal for them here, and probably not something they care about too much yet, as they have their sights set on something a lot bigger in the long term, and I think you know what I'm talking about. Moving on though, another veteran player they picked up was Harrison Barnes, and I think a lot of people overlooked it too. Now, he might not be the player that he was back in his prime, but he still is a productive role player, coming off of averaging about 12.2 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, and shooting 39% from 3 on about 5 attempts per game. And that definitely could help a team that ranked in the bottom 3 in 3-point percentage last season. That's one thing that Harrison Barnes can definitely help them with. And your 38% career 3-point shooter and a very good catch and shooter, That will help open up the entire court for a guy like Victor Wembanyama or Devin Vassell, and they definitely will benefit from that too. Again, Harrison Barnes is a near 38% career 3-point shooter, and not to mention a career 42% corner 3-point shooter. And he will now become the best and most experienced 3-point shooter on their entire team. And again, with Chris Paul now at the helm, he will be finding Harrison Barnes in the corner and wing very often. And then with teams overcrowding Victor Wembanyama, that will leave Harrison Barnes with a lot of room to shoot the ball, which definitely will benefit him by the way too. And then finally, for the last big addition they made this summer, they drafted Stephon 4th overall out of UConn, and boy did he look great throughout Summer League too. Now he did get hurt and didn't play throughout the entire Summer League, but he looked great in the 3 games that he did play, putting up over 17 points, about 6 rebounds, 4 assists, over 1 steal, and playing elite defense while doing it, really looking like their point guard or kind of point forward of the future, with him being a lot bigger than your standard point guard, being 6'6", having a 215-pound frame, and not to mention being 19 years old. So yeah, again, not your typical point guard. And like I mentioned before about Chris Paul's mentorship, that will definitely apply to a guy like Castle, who will be able to learn a lot from him. He's not quite the great playmaker, or definitely not anywhere close to the level of CP3 yet, and he might not ever be, but he can definitely take things away from Chris Paul. Whether that be playmaking, reading the defense, or whatever it might be on the court, there is a lot to learn from a veteran point guard like Chris Paul, and Stephon Castle will have 1, hopefully 2 or 3 years to learn that from him too. Though he definitely is a lot of things like Chris Paul has never been, or really never could be. Again, Castle is 6'6", has a 215-pound frame, and is a great vertical athlete. And with Chris Paul and Trey Jones likely to be running the show at point guard for them, that will leave Castle playing off the ball quite a bit, which he definitely can do, but does need to show more improvement, primarily from the 3-point line. During his lone year of college, he only shot about 27% from 3, and then didn't show much improvement throughout Summer League. Albeit being in only 3 games, he only shot 25% from 3, and that will be the priority number 1 for him this season, becoming a better off-ball player and becoming a better shooter in general, as you definitely do need to shoot in the modern NBA. Even with his great defense and great athletic ability, he won't be able to completely get around that. He will need to become a better shooter, and definitely a better 3-point shooter sooner rather than later, as the NBA tends to move on pretty quick. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, I definitely do like Stephon Castle, and think he could help the rotation this season, kind of being what the Oklahoma City Thunder got from Cason Wallace minus the 3-point shooting, aka being a great point of attack defender, a solid secondary playmaker, and all around a steady role player that can provide value in year number 1. Moving on though, there is plenty to like about this Spurs team, and one of my personal favorites happens to be Devin Vassell, who might be due for a breakout. Even while going through injuries the past couple of years, he has still been very productive, and during the past 2, the guy put up 19.1 points per game, about 4 assists and 4 rebounds per game, and shot 38% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts per game, and again that's been while going through multiple injuries. But now with him finally healthy, he could be due for a true breakout, and a 2-way breakout too. He's not only effective on offense, but a really good defender as well. And with him only having turned 24 years old less than a month ago, there is plenty of room for improvement here as well. Another very interesting player for their team though does happen to be Jeremy Sochan. And even though the point guard experiment failed, there's definitely plenty to like about him. He's already a great defender and really good rebounder as well, but the offense is coming a bit slowly. If he ever would reach it though, and even during this season, that could be a big boost to their team. He did show a little bit of improvement last season, averaging a little more points per game, shooting a little bit better from the 3-point line, and being a bit more efficient overall. But again, he's not quite there yet, and we will have to patiently wait for him as he is only 21 years old. And then, even though Keldon Johnson is kind of viewed as a veteran on this team, about to turn 25 and being a 5-year NBA vet, really old, right? But he could show more improvement as well. He did average about 22 points per game during the 2022-23 NBA season, and has showed to be a very good offensive threat. Now I think he could stand to become a better defender and overall more efficient player in general, which I think Chris Paul might be able to help him with, but any improvement from him could really help their team as well. I think they view him as more of a 6-man at this point, which is a pretty good idea in my opinion, and especially if they do hope to make a playoff push, but he definitely could show more improvement and they would definitely benefit from it. And then for a couple of quote-unquote dark horse candidates, I think one of them could be Trey Jones. Sure, the hype might be down on him a little bit, but I think he does have more room for improvement. Only being 24 years old and now with Chris Paul being there to mentor him, I think he could show a lot of improvement this season. Yeah, he did average about 3 points per game less last season compared to the prior one, but he did become more efficient, finally shooting over 30% from the 3-point line. And although 33.5% is nothing to write home about, it was a lot of improvement, and it does show that he can become a better 3-point shooter. And then he did maintain a great assist-to-turnover ratio, being in that top 20 like I mentioned before, and that shows that he can be a really good point guard for them and probably the long-term solution for point guard of them too, or at least hopefully anyways. And then for another mini dark horse, you can really take your pick for any center on their team. I mean, we all know Victor Wembanyama will show improvement, that's a given, but even Zach Collins and Charles Bassey could as well. Any center that plays with Chris Paul automatically will become better. Whether it's actual improvement or simply benefiting from sharing the court with him, they will get better from a numbers standpoint at the very least. And for Zach Collins, I think we could see him average more than the 11 points per game that he's averaged with their team up until this point, and even better from the 3-point line too. He will be more open than ever before, and definitely both around the rim and the 3-point line as well. Maybe even shooting a career high about 40% from 3, and that would definitely benefit their all-around floor spacing. And then for Bassey, he is coming off an injury, but I think he definitely will benefit from Chris Paul as well. He's kind of that more traditional rim runner, pick and roller, and athletic big man around the rim, and they have been proven to work well with Chris Paul. Whether you're talking about Bismack Biyombo, JaVale McGee, or Tyson Chandler going back to the mid-2000s, there have been plenty that benefit from playing with him. But then of course, I think we can all agree that Victor Wembanyama will be the biggest beneficiary of playing with Chris Paul. I mean, can you imagine the lobs that they're about to attempt? And not only attempt, but then complete as well. Victor Wembanyama is already a freak around the rim, and even without a point god like Chris Paul, but now with him getting the ball to Victor Wembanyama around the rim, I can only imagine how it might look like. Sure, there might be trial and error at first, but it won't take long for a great point guard and one of the best of all time like Chris Paul to work well with Victor Wembanyama, and he'll get him the ball in great positions, better than he has ever known up until this point. And if you go back and watch their half-court film, that's something that often bothered Victor Wembanyama, his teammates not being able to get him the ball or not in good spots, and that simply won't be a problem anymore, or at least when Chris Paul is healthy. I already know that Victor Wembanyama can average more points per game, likely more rebounds per game, and being a lot more efficient as well. He did attempt a lot of jump shots, which they want him to do to develop, but I guarantee he'll shoot over 50% from the field this season, and likely closer to 35% from 3 as well, maybe even a little bit higher. But if they truly do hope to make a playoff push or even crack the play-in tournament, a lot will be riding on Victor Wembanyama, and maybe for him to even win that quote-unquote triple crown, aka Defensive Player of the Year, All-NBA First Team, and MVP. Maybe not winning all 3, but definitely being in the running for them, and it could take that much for them to be a playoff team. Again, they're simply a young team at this point, full of a bunch of talent, but not quite NBA ready talent or not NBA championship level talent. Victor Wembanyama might be pretty close, even with him going into his second year and only being 20 years old, but a lot will ride on him alone to make their team a playoff team. I'm not sure they're there quite yet. I think they will be on that borderline, and especially even closer with guys like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson taking another leap, but they might be 1 year away. Overall though, there's a lot to like about this San Antonio Spurs team, and not only Victor Wembanyama. I think they're going to be a ton of fun to watch, and especially with adding veterans like Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, they could be on that borderline of being a playoff team or simply being a much better team than they were last season. And every leap forward is a good one for them. We watched how the Oklahoma City Thunder develop, and they did it through internal improvement, which I think the Spurs are following the same formula, and I do agree with that as well. But with that being said, I think they'll pretty much do it, and let me know what you guys think about the Spurs and what they did this summer in the comments down below. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.